Hello everyone and welcome to Coaster Round. Today I'll be ranking the coasters at Cedar Point by how excited I am to ride them or how anticipated I am to ride them, since I will be visiting Cedar Point for the first time this summer. Keep in mind that this isn't a ranking of a prediction, but rather a list of the coasters I'm most excited to ride. Also, even though I have all 17 coasters on here, I may not be able to ride all 17 coasters at Cedar Point, so keep that in mind. With all that said, let's get right into this. At the bottom of the list, we have WOODSTOCK Express, and this is just a pretty simple, typical Vekoma family coaster. It has been cloned many times and really doesn't have any sort of significance, which is actually pretty unusual for coasters at Cedar Point, so for that reason, it is toward the bottom of the list. Coming in at number 16 is Wilderness Run, a kiddie coaster that, though it doesn't seem to do a whole lot, it is actually pretty significant as it was the first coaster ever built by Intamin, and they have gone on to create some amazing coasters, including some of the higher coasters on this list. So it does have some significance, and it actually is a pretty hard credit to get because most riders, you have to be under 54 inches, but there have been some people who have been able to ride it despite that, and hopefully I can do that. So Wilderness Run is coming in at number 16. At number 15, we have the classic Cedar Creek Mine Ride, a classic aero mine train that is one of the older coasters at Cedar Point. Unfortunately, it is said to be pretty rough and it doesn't really have a great layout. But the one good thing about it is it does have a pretty nice setting and it is a classic, so for that reason, I do have it higher than some of the other coasters, but for the most part, I'm not too excited to ride this one. Number 14 is another aero creation, CORKSCREW, the first coaster to ever include 3 inversions. Unfortunately though, like Cedar Creek Mine Ride, it is said to be pretty rough nowadays, and combined with a pretty dull and outdated layout, and you have a coaster that definitely isn't the park standout anymore. On the positive side, the corkscrews look pretty awesome to look at and are very iconic, and the first hill may provide some nice airtime, but overall, this is not a coaster I'm dying to ride on. Iron Dragon, the aero suspended coaster, takes the number 13 spot. It has a pretty nice setting and looks to have some fun moments like the first drop, and some of the turns just look pretty solid and fun. But unfortunately, it looks a little too tame for my liking, and the layout could have been a bit better. It looks a bit uninteresting, but still, it is a suspended coaster. There's not too many of them out there, at least aero ones left. So for that reason, it comes in at number 13. At number 12, we have Wicked Twister. This coaster looks to have some fun and intense launches, and the twists look pretty fun. But I just don't really know what to expect from Wicked Twister, as I haven't ridden an Intamin Impulse coaster or anything like it. But I still am looking forward to seeing what Wicked Twister offers, just not as much as some of the other coasters ahead of it. ROUGAROU, the first B&M to make the list, comes in at number 11. For B&M Floorless coasters, which is what this coaster is, they've been pretty hit or miss for me. I liked Medusa at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, but thought that Scream at Six Flags Magic Mountain and Patriot at California's Great America were pretty mediocre. The reviews I've heard for ROUGAROU are a bit mixed, but I think the layout of ROUGAROU is pretty solid. So if it isn't rough, I think it'll be a fun coaster to ride, and it definitely makes sense to be number 11 on this list. At number 10, I have Blue Streak. It is a classic wooden roller coaster, and I absolutely love these classic wooden roller coasters. And Blue Streak, it just looks to deliver some good airtime and an overall fun ride. It also is currently the oldest coaster at Cedar Point, so it definitely has some historical value to it, and so definitely it is a coaster that I'm very much looking forward to riding. At number 9, we have another classic, Gemini. This aero hybrid coaster is pretty different looking than really anything I've ridden. It has a layout of a wooden coaster until the ending, and the racing aspect is pretty awesome. At least it looks that way. It also looks like it can deliver some pretty awesome airtime moments and be really fun. It looks like a classic and something unlike anything I've ever ridden. So even though I've heard it is a bit rough, it's definitely a coaster that I will make sure I will ride when I'm there. Valraven comes in at number 8, and this B&M dive coaster, unless it's closed, it will be the first one I ever ride. And I can't wait to experience one because I've heard the drops, like the first drop, they're incredible on them, and Valraven, no different, used to have the tallest drop on any dive coaster in the world up until this year. And of course the inversions on it, the Immelman and the Zero G roll, they look really fun, really awesome. However, this coaster looks to be too gimmicky, at least for me to rank it any higher, but it still looks really fun, so that is why it takes the number 8 spot on my list. At number 7, I have Gatekeeper, the B&M wing coaster that greets you right at the entrance of Cedar Point. It looks really fun. Going over the entrance with some fun inversions and through the neat keyholes that serve as near-miss elements will give a ride experience that should be very different from anything I've done, and also just very neat. I mean, the near-miss elements look pretty incredible. Combine that with smooth track, and this may end up being one of my favorite B&M coasters of all time. So, definitely a coaster I'm looking forward to riding. Raptor slides in at number 6, and this is a B&M invert and one of the most intense coasters at Cedar Point, at least from the looks of it, and also one of the most intense B&Ms out there. It has very whippy inversions and a very forceful helix, all being done at a pretty fast pace. Having ridden a few other B&M inverts, it'll be interesting to see how Raptor compares with the other ones, and I think Raptor could even become my favorite B&M invert. Starting us off with the top 5, we have Top Thrill Dragster, the second tallest coaster in the entire world. This intimate accelerated coaster towers over the Cedar Point skyline, standing at 420 feet tall. And also, it is one of the fastest coasters out there. Though the ride is short, the launch is said to be nothing short of incredible, and going that high must be an incredible experience, and one that I want to experience, of course. That being said, Dragster has been known to be unreliable with being open consistently, so if I see it running at opening, it'll definitely be the first coaster I ride. At number 4, we have MAGNUM XL200. This aero masterpiece was the first hypercoaster ever built, and over the years has had some very mixed reviews. Almost everyone agrees, however, that this coaster has some very powerful airtime, which is what I want in a coaster. However, it is the roughness that people have complained about that very much affects where people put it. Some people look past the roughness and even have this ranked as the second best coaster at Cedar Point. Others think it's one of the worst. So definitely it is very controversial in that aspect, but I don't think I'll have an issue with the roughness. And actually, having ridden Superman El Ultimo Escape, which is in some ways pretty similar to MAGNUM, it'll definitely be interesting to see how MAGNUM XL200 compares. So definitely, this is a coaster that I very much want to ride. At number 3, we have Millennium Force, one of the most iconic and famous coasters in the entire world, as it was considered to be the first ever Giga coaster, or coaster over 300 feet. Millennium Force is definitely a fantastic looking ride with a beautiful sighting by Lake Erie, an amazing first drop, an incredible sensation of speed, and solid airtime moments. It used to be considered by many as the best coaster in the entire world, and while it is not seen as such anymore, Millennium Force still looks to give a world-class experience that I'll make sure I won't miss. For the number 2 spot, I have Maverick. While most of the coasters at Cedar Point hold or at one point held world records, Maverick never really did, and this ride shows that stats aren't everything. With an insane first drop, crazy rapid transitions, awesome ejector airtime, an intense launch, and fun inversions, Maverick brings the full package and hopefully will deliver one of the most fun yet intense coaster experiences I've ever had, and maybe even become one of my all-time favorite coasters. Now, for my number 1 most anticipated coaster to ride at Cedar Point, I think you all know what this ride is. It's Pipe Scream, the Zamperla Disco Coaster. Man, what an absolute masterpiece. While this ride may not be the largest ever, or even have the most complicated layout, it is big on fun, and that is why it takes the top spot, and it's one of the best coasters ever built. Just kidding, but for real, my most anticipated coaster to ride at Cedar Point is the one and only Steel Vengeance. The airtime that Steel Vengeance gives looks absolutely bonkers when it comes to both quality and quantity, as it actually gives almost 30 seconds of airtime throughout the entire course of the ride. And because of that, Steel Vengeance, it is a very long ride, over a minute long, from drop to brakes, with terrific pacing that definitely has a chance of becoming my number 1 roller coaster. Every moment looks pretty great, with the best moments looking absolutely insane, and for that reason, Steel Vengeance is my most anticipated coaster to ride at Cedar Point. If you enjoyed the video and are new, consider subscribing to get more coaster and park related content. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time here on Coaster Hour.